Hello, today's topic is zodiac signs. The first thing we usually hear about in astrology, somebody will say to you, I'm a Gemini, my wife is a Cancer, do we get along with each other? And astrologers rely very heavily on zodiac signs. Now, do they really work? I'm going to suggest that they do, but not in the way that they're often described as working. I'm going to present a little bit different idea of how zodiac signs will work. Also, I'm going to base this on an evidence-based approach, specifically extreme case sampling on the independent variable, which is a fancy way of saying we'll take extreme charts, people that have tons of a zodiac sign in their birth chart. I'm only going to do a few examples. It's just an introduction to this idea. In the future, I'll be making specific tutorial videos on each zodiac sign. Okay, now, first thing I'm going to suggest, and zodiac signs and all of astrology is very controversial. So no matter what you say, you'll get into trouble with somebody. But I'm going to put out there that I think zodiac signs are poor descriptions of the overall personality. So, zodiac signs are often portrayed as mythic characters. So Aries is the warrior, and he or she has her sword and goes out and fights and is strong and takes action. And, this is a basic description of who this person is, describes them, and that this mythical character, this archetypal character, is a part of us who have whatever sign is strong. And I'm going to suggest it doesn't really work that way. Even a person who has a lot of a zodiac sign, very heavy emphasis on a zodiac sign, won't really fit the archetype very well. Well, you say, if they don't fit the archetype, David, then it doesn't work. Well, I'm going to suggest there's you might say, a more subtle way that zodiac signs might work. But the idea that somebody with tons of Aries is going to be out there as a warrior with a sword fighting the world doesn't really work. Now that's controversial, and that may get some people riled up. But as I get into this, maybe we'll come to a closer agreement when you see what I'm referring to. Here's a person with an extreme sign. It's Xavier Cugat, musician and band leader, and he's a triple Capricorn. Sun, Moon, and Ascendant in Capricorn. Now, this is a round number time. If he was born a little earlier, it would be Sagittarius. It would only be double Capricorn, and Mars also in Capricorn. But in any case, he does have Sun and Moon in Capricorn. Only 1 out of 144 people, very, very roughly, would have Sun and Moon in the same sign. Plus, he has Mars in Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Anyway, it's a good place for it. So he should be Mr. Capricorn. If you have only 1% of the population with something, he should be very, very extremely Capricorn. Now, is he? Is he detached, dry, sober? I've got some notes here. Let's see what I say in my slides here. Dry, detached, old, all business. Well, you can argue the point, but I would say basically no. Maybe if you give him Sagittarius rising instead of Capricorn, but not as a triple Capricorn. He is all about business. He is a manipulator. He has some strong Capricornian traits, but is he Mr. Capricorn? He's full of life with his, Latin American music and, exuberance, and much more the Sagittarian. Why does the Sagittarius dominate over the Capricorn as a personality, as an archetype? I'm not saying he doesn't have some Capricorn qualities, but is he really Mr. Capricorn or Mr. Sagittarius? Well, I know what you're thinking, a combination of both. But would we be able to see this person with all this life and zest and so on, vitality, with all that Capricorn? Maybe, maybe not. Why is it we don't always see the Capricorn that clearly? Let me give you an example, another example of Capricorn, not as extreme as Sun, Moon, Mars, but a lot of Capricorn, Elvis Presley. Also Sun in Capricorn, and Venus in Capricorn, in the last degree of Capricorn. 29 Capricorn 22, and Mercury in Capricorn. Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Capricorn. I have known astrologers who would look at a chart and see Venus in Capricorn and say, oh no, that person's too dry romantically. You don't want to date that person. You know, they're too manipulative. They're not, sensual enough. They're not emotional enough. Here's my point. As a general character, is Elvis Presley primarily an emotionally detached, businesslike, older, dry sort of person? I think it's pretty hard to argue that that's true. He's Elvis the pelvis. I mean, he's full of life and action and, rebelliousness and, I don't know if it's rebelliousness, but, just electricity, charisma, his sexiness, his cuteness. Is there a Capricorn element? I think there is, and I'll talk about that. But that's my point. If you think that someone with Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Capricorn is going to be, you can describe them as being Capricornian, ruled by Saturn, detached, dry, you would never expect Elvis Presley. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, yes, but he has Capricornian elements in his life, that's my point. My point is that the zodiac signs describe a way that you relate to the world, a lens through which you see the world and you interact with the world. But all of the descriptors that we have, all of these descriptive elements of the zodiac signs, very often don't fit. So I think what Capricorn does is it gives some detachment, the ability to play a role, the ability to manipulate things, to develop strategies. Some of the things that are similar, Xavier Cugat and Elvis Presley, both are in the music field, both are full of life and enthusiasm and action. Xavier Cugat grew up learning classical music. You would think with this Capricorn he would be happy with that. But he turns to this Latin American, he's the guy who makes the cha-cha and all this, the tango, and he brings the stuff into the American living room. He also has his image that he plays. He's got his little dog and his cigar. He knows how to put on a performance. He knows how to manipulate the system. He's a womanizer. He takes advantage of women. He knows how to play a role and make it work. This is Capricorn. It does not necessarily make you dry, boring, strictly a business person. Same thing with Elvis. He has his costumes. He has his way of managing things, of seeing things. There is a little bit of detachment. He doesn't get completely emotionally involved in ways that he probably should, although he's a very passionate person. I shouldn't say should, but as would be helpful in a marriage, for example. So my point is, I think that zodiac signs are more subtle, they're more psychological, they do not describe the life of the person. That's my basic point. So they work better on a psychological level than they do as a description of the person. And this is really important. Another video I mentioned Steffi Graf with all of her Gemini. She's not talkative. She's not a social butterfly. She's not a chatterbox. But she's triple Gemini. And it's not a round number time. It's from a birth certificate. But there's something Gemini about the lens through which she sees the world. So that's my basic point. Let's see what I've got here in my notes. Xavier Cugat, he does clearly see, manipulate, plays the roles, puts on the costumes that lead him to success. Elvis Presley, the same thing. He also has his costumes. But as a personality, he seems the opposite of Capricorn. He's a pretty boy. He's got the pretty face. He's young. He acts young. He is young. He's vital, vibrant. It's not the image of Capricorn. And if you say, well, there's so many images of Capricorn, so many possible archetypes. Well, if there's so many, then we can't really trust the zodiac sign to say anything consistent about it. But I think the consistent thing we can say about Capricorn is that the person sees the lens with a strong element of detachment and the ability to manipulate, play roles, and strategize. And both of those individuals were very good at that. They both knew how to use costumes. And that's it. Unfortunately, you don't get as much out of zodiac signs as we try. We try to squeeze too much out of them. That's my suggestion. I'll give you one more example. Art Carney, Mr. Scorpio. Now, Art Carney was a comedian. He was born also double Scorpio, Sun and Moon. Remember, only less than 1 out of 100 people are going to be double sign. And his Venus in Scorpio. So is he Mr. Scorpio? Is he a hypnotist, charismatic, quiet, sexy, all these things? Not really. He's light. He's a comedian. It doesn't describe Art Carney. That's my point. Is there a Scorpio element to his life? Yes. He sees the life through a Scorpio lens. Psychologically, you could say he is a hypnotist or heart surgeon, but as a personality, he's just not. He's just not that charismatic, quiet, mystical, secretive kind of person. He's a comedian, but he sees the world through the Scorpio lens. The Scorpio lens to me means merging with the experience. He gets divorced. It drives him crazy. He starts taking drugs and drinking. This is a Scorpio experience because Scorpio merges with their experience. When they marry, they're totally merged. In the Bible, does it say something about the two flesh shall be as one? That must be written by somebody with a lot of Scorpio. They become as one. He later remarries his wife. Now that's extremely Scorpio because they never really ever get divorced. So that's my point. Psychologically, it's true, but he's not Scorpio. He's, as a personality, he just isn't. But somehow that psychological element of merging, becoming one, Scorpio is so different from Capricorn, which is detached. So each of the zodiac signs is a lens, a way that people relate to the world, but it doesn't necessarily color their entire lives with all of the images and qualities that we give to the zodiac signs. They're more subtle, and we try to get more out of zodiac signs than we can. So conclusions. And by the way, I'm illustrating the points using some charts. There's more rigorous ways to demonstrate the ideas through the extreme case sampling and use all charts that meet some criteria. I'm just, illustrating the concepts here. Also note that there have been several studies of whether astrologers can describe people. You give an astrologer a birth chart, can they describe the person accurately? In most of the studies, the astrologers are not able to do that. This, to me, is not surprising because astrologers rely heavily on zodiac signs, for example, and other things, and expecting them to describe the overall personality of the person. Doesn't work. If you're given the chart of Elvis Presley and you're told one guy is a rock and roller, wild and out of control, and another guy is, more restrained or whatever, you're going to say it fits the restrained person. Or if you're just told to describe, to interpret the chart. So it doesn't work as an overall description, but it does, describe a lens through which the person sees the world. There are other ideas that I use. I use this idea that one sign does not remove the influence of another sign. Once you reduce signs down to one simple function, that function is always there. It makes the chart interpretation very simple. In the way that I happen to look at zodiac signs, it's very simple, very direct, very consistent. I don't have to do a lot of guessing about what's going on. And also note, I am not just saying you have to look at the whole chart. A lot of times when something doesn't work, people say, we have to look at the whole chart. Well, I do look at the whole chart, and it still doesn't work if I use the old ideas of zodiac signs as describing the entire person. If I look at the whole chart of any of these people, I'm saying something in addition to that. I think we give too much emphasis on zodiac signs, expecting too much out of them. They serve a more specific and a fairly subtle function. And it leads to question, is there anything that would describe the person? Is there something that would tell me that Elvis Presley has this electric music and this charisma and this sexiness? There is. Absolutely there is. Or tell me that Xavier Cugat has the traits that he has. Yes. I think that you see the person in the aspect patterns. The signs and houses only color the aspect patterns. Just a suggestion, just an idea. I know gets very controversial, but I'm trying to give some indication of how these ideas are developed, and basically they're developed just by looking at charts and trying to see if I can see the person. Do I see Art Carney in this chart? Do I see him with the emphasis that is in his actual real life? I want to see a comedian, first and foremost. I want to see who he is. And then if I want to see his personal life and the way he relates, I want to see that as well. The zodiac signs relate more to the personal life and the perspective and attitude and lens through which you see the world. They don't really tell you much about the talent and the basic personality of the person, which I think is more in the aspect patterns. Okay, so an idea about zodiac signs. I hope you found that interesting, a little bit different from what you've heard. Also, if you're a skeptic of astrology or a cynic of astrology, you might say, okay, here's an astrologer who admits these zodiac signs don't work, and now he's trying to give me this subtle stuff. Maybe zodiac signs don't work at all. Maybe they don't, but I think we shouldn't go into this with an a priori assumption. The cynics will go in saying, I know this doesn't work, and see, he's showing it doesn't work, and making things up to try to get it to work. And if you're an astrologer, you go in assuming it works and feel like I'm detracting too much from the way it really does work. And all I'm suggesting is, if we just remain more open-minded about it without too many assumptions, I think you can reasonably conclude that zodiac signs do work, but they don't describe things like the vocation, the behavior, the basic way the person lives their lives. It describes a lens through which they approach whatever it is they're approaching. In the chart of Elvis Presley, when we look at the aspect patterns, we'll see that he's a wild rock and roller, and then he approaches it in a Capricorn way. Same thing with Xavier Cugat. He approaches it through that Capricorn lens. So the zodiac signs are in a way secondary to the action that the aspects reveal. That's just a suggestion, just an idea, and I've given some ideas, some example charts to give you some sense of how those ideas are developed. Okay, hope you found that interesting. God bless. Namaste.